So yesterday was kind of a bad day, and people were talking about it all over social media. I'm so tired of this broken world. I'm a mom. I'm so scared for my children's future. This is why I don't even want to have kids. Teetering between utter hopelessness and sheer denial. Honestly, I feel like we are doomed. I don't know what to do. See, yesterday people, especially people in the United States, were upset about a U.S. Supreme Court ruling. Yesterday, the Supreme Court granted U.S. presidents broad immunity for committing crimes while in office. Some critics suggested this subverts the rule of law and effectively turns presidents into kings, which, is frustrating because this is kind of what the whole American experiment was set up to oppose. So that was the bad news yesterday. But here's the thing. This topic is kind of evergreen. Nowadays, when you read the news, every day kind of seems like a bad day. Yesterday, it was the Supreme Court ruling. Tomorrow, it will be a report about climate change. Today, I opened the New York Times app to find a story about the creation of AI killer robots, which is great. Good stuff. Bad things keep happening. Sometimes it feels like we are doomed, like the forces of evil are inevitably going to triumph over the forces of good.
Inevitable.
So what do we do? How do we keep going when it feels like we are living in the darkest timeline? This video, I hope, will help you do that. So the first thing you need to do, I think, is understand something about the nature of evil and the nature of injustice. And once we understand the bad stuff, I think we can better understand what we have to do when it seems like things are bad and getting worse. So let's talk about evil. Evil is not new. It's been around for a long time. Human beings who are unjust and predatory and want to dominate other people, they have always existed. When we look at books from hundreds or even thousands of years ago, we find people confronting problems and threats a lot like the ones we're facing today. In an ancient book like Plato's Gorgias, for example, we can find very modern debates about good and evil, right and wrong. So Plato, of course, was an ancient Greek philosopher, and he wrote dialogues, which are kind of like plays. And Plato often included his teacher, Socrates, as a character in these dialogues. So in the Gorgias, which is a dialogue that's about 2,400 years old, Socrates encounters this total sociopath named Callicles. Basically, Callicles makes the claim that justice is just a convention. The rules only apply to ordinary people. The rules are just for us normies. But exceptional people, real alpha males like Callicles, they get to make up the rules for themselves. The rules don't apply to them. Justice is for suckers and for sheep. Really smart and strong people like Callicles, they don't have to play by the rules. But I think those who set down the laws are the weak human beings and the many. It is therefore in reference to themselves and their own advantage that they set down laws and praise their praises and blame their blames, frightening away the more forceful human beings and those with power to have more. I think if a man having sufficient nature comes into being, he shakes off and breaks through all these things and gets away, trampling underfoot our writings, spells, charms, and the laws that are all against nature. And the slave rises up to be revealed as our master, and there the justice of nature shines forth. So arguments like these are pretty familiar to us, right? That justice, the law, the rules, these are just conventions made up by the weak to keep the strong at bay. And look, some rules are conventional. Whether you drive on the left or right-hand side of the road, for example, that's just a made-up rule. But not all rules are like this. You can't steal, you can't assault other people. Without some standards of justice, human life becomes unlivable. But the depressing thing is, sometimes it feels like Callicles is right. It can be very hard in the world to hold powerful people to account. The rich and the powerful and the corrupt, they seem to get away with a lot of things. And in some ways, this seems to validate Callicles' thesis. Like, the rules apply to some people and they don't apply to other people. So I think there are two important lessons we need to learn here about the nature of evil. One is that on social media, sometimes it seems like things are uniquely bad. Like, this thing happened today and it changes everything. Now, like, the world is different than it was before. And that's sort of true. But Plato reminds us that people like Callicles have always existed. This kind of selfishness, this contempt for justice, this contempt for ordinary people, that has always been around. The second thing I think we ought to realize is that sometimes unjust people will succeed at doing unjust things. Socrates, remember, is an example of someone who suffers terrible injustice. Socrates does not triumph over the Callicleses of the world. He is put to death in Athens for practicing philosophy. So not only have unjust people always existed, historically speaking, unjust people often win. But there's another thing about evil that we've got to understand. Even when the bad guys lose, they don't quit. There's a very famous poem you may have heard of, written in the 1660s by an English poet named John Milton. It's called Paradise Lost. And one of the main characters in this poem, some might even say the protagonist of this poem is a very evil guy that you are probably familiar with, Satan. So sort of the most evil guy. Milton's epic poem is about the Garden of Eden story and about Satan's temptation of Adam and Eve. So in a way, it's about the introduction of evil into the human race. But at the start of this poem, we see Satan defeated. We meet Satan in hell. He's lying on his back. He's on the mat. He's been cast out of heaven by God after unjustly trying to usurp God's sovereignty in heaven. Satan tried to overthrow the creator of the universe, and he lost. Him the almighty power hurled headlong, flaming from the ethereal sky with hideous ruin and combustion down to bottomless perdition, there to dwell in adamantine chains and penal fire. Who durst defy the omnipotent arms? But by the second book of Paradise Lost, Satan is defiant. He has a new plan. If he can't overthrow God in heaven, he'll target his prized creation, humanity. He'll travel to earth and either destroy us or corrupt us. Here, perhaps some advantageous act may be achieved by sudden onset, either with hellfire to waste his whole creation, or possess all as our own, and drive, as we were driven, the puny inhabitants, or if not drive, seduce them to our party, that their God may prove their foe, and with repenting hand abolish his own works. Milton's Satan has all kinds of flaws. He's irrational, he's arrogant, he lacks self-knowledge, he's jealous and petty, but he is also resilient. He persists in his delusions. He is vindictive, and he refuses to accept defeat even when his defeat is definitive. If he loses a contest, he refuses to accept the results of that contest. I think Milton gives us an important insight into the nature of injustice and evil. Evil keeps coming. The reason you can open social media and every day see some new horrible thing is the same reason that you can read a poem from 400 years ago or 2,400 years ago and see a recognizable portrait of evil there. Injustice is persistent. It keeps coming. So part of what this means, and this may be a tough pill to swallow, is that there is not a future free of injustice. There's not a future available to us, at least not a human future, where we have triumphed over evil. But there are better and worse outcomes for us. And getting to those better, those more just futures is going to be difficult. Part of the reason evil in the real world frustrates us has to do with Star Wars. Stay with me. A lot of us grew up on movies like Star Wars, where a rebel alliance scored a decisive victory against the Empire by blowing up the Death Star. And I think in a lot of cases in our real lives, we keep hoping for that decisive victory, this moment when good will triumph over evil and the forces of injustice will be vanquished. But this is not how progress is achieved, how injustice is defeated. It's never defeated once and for all. In fact, even in Star Wars, it's not defeated once and for all. In Return of the Jedi, they had to blow up the Death Star again. In The Force Awakens, they had to blow up the Death Star again. It's a little bit more like that. Every day, you've got to get up and go to work and blow up the Death Star. And more than likely, you're not going to be Luke or Han. You're just going to be this guy helping out. Evil might be more like Bowser from Super Mario Bros. I loved Mario as a kid. I played Nintendo. I defeated Bowser. And now my son loves Mario. And he has to defeat Bowser. And Bowser just keeps coming back. He just keeps kidnapping Princess Peach. And I spent my youth fighting Bowser, and now my son's got to spend his youth fighting Bowser. We've got to keep fighting Bowser day in and day out because Bowser doesn't stay down. And this is what we have to do. Unfortunately, we can't stop. You've got to keep voting and protesting and going to meetings and speaking up and educating yourselves. You have to volunteer. You have to create things when you can. You have to take care of your friends and your family. You've got to keep caring about other people and doing your best to make the world a better place as much as you can for as long as you live. Because injustice and evil are resilient. They keep coming back. They don't accept defeat. So if you're the type of person who loves justice, you can't accept defeat either. And if you're feeling despair about the state of the world, and it seems like things just keep getting worse and you don't know what to do, and you need some help picking yourself back up, here's a video about 3 great thinkers, three women writers who can help you do that. So click on that link. I'll see you there, and I'll talk to you soon.